place where real dialogue matters.
Make some noise for that sound, man.
It is time to take flight with Audio Airstrike.
What's up, everybody? I'm Everett Hall-McNeill, and this is Audio Airstrike. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 141. Now, for those of you on the news that have seen what's been going on with Lebanon, first off, I want to give my deepest sympathy and condolences for the people out there that have been suffering after that explosion. Our hearts go out to them. So I just want to take like a quick 5-second pause, no sound for the thoughts and lives that were affected by that explosion. And we're back. So with that being said, due to what's been going on over the past number of weeks, I wanted to bring somebody in over a fun topic. Now, a lot of people have been doing certain things this quarantine. Some of y'all been getting your exercise in. Some of y'all have been binge watching a lot of shows you didn't have the chance to when you were sitting there working. Some of you guys are still working through the pandemic and teleworking and whatnot. Some of you guys are unemployed. Look, I hope you get what's necessary. And I hope you make it out and do whichever you need to do. There's been a lot of shifts and twists and turns when it comes to the quarantine, but I brought somebody here by the name of Dave Glaser. And the reason why I brought Dave Glaser in here is for the topic of dating while in quarantine or quarantine dating. Dave, we appreciate you for coming on. We're going to get right down to I'm going to put my detective hat on and try to understand where you're coming from a dating perspective.
Yeah, you bet, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. So, we got to get right down to it, man. I'm going to just ask, a lot of people don't know who you are. Who knows? You may be an undercover celebrity I don't know about. Who knows? But I just wanted to kind of talk with you, man, and I just wanted to kind of give you the floor and just tell a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. First of all, I'm a single dad, been divorced for 15 years now. And it's funny that you mentioned all of those things that came with quarantine because I check every single box. I'm a personal trainer by profession, and the gym got shut down in mid-March. And I certainly didn't know what was going to come around the next corner. And I lost about 90% of my income. So let's just say that dating was not at the forefront of my mind in March. But after a couple months of really buckling down, maybe moderately binge watching some Netflix, moderately drinking wine every other night, just trying to handle my business as best I could. And being self-employed, there was no financial support there for me. So I had to get down to the nitty-gritty and actually make something happen for myself. So I was just filming my workouts at home that I needed to do for myself to stay in shape. And then I started selling those to my clients that I couldn't work with in the gym. So turned a negative into a positive there. And once I got that ball rolling, I figured it was about time to start dating again, maybe take a couple months off. Originally 2020 in January, I decided to not date to reach some financial goals that I had. And the universe had other ideas in mind. So I didn't start dating again until about the end of May. And that's when things got interesting.
He got this mischievous smile on his face. That's when things got very interesting. Yeah, we're going to get right down to it too. So let me ask you this. When you started dating online, what particular things were you looking for in a mate? Because we get, and once again, shout out to you for turning a negative into a positive. We definitely appreciate that. We definitely support that. But I got to get down to what were some things you were looking for in a potential mate in terms of while being in quarantine?
Mm-hmm. I guess in the last 3 years of being officially single after a couple of long-term relationships, I've had a lot of trial and error to understand how to navigate and how to sift through the personalities that you're going to meet online. So what I look for first is any type of an appearance that we would share some values. I'm a personal trainer and an active dad. I like to go hiking and skiing and recently got gifted a bike, which is great. So I need to at least see or hear through their profile that they're going to keep an active lifestyle just like I do. I think that's a really big, important value in my life of taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Those are really my 5 values that I look for. And you're probably thinking like, it's hard to find those 5 things through an online dating profile. But the
Especially
more
this era.
that's exactly right. And the more trial and error you have, the more likely it is that you're going to understand what you're not looking for. So if a couple of pictures on your profile have alcohol in there, maybe not the right fit because I'm a moderate drinker. Maybe if you're not specifically sharing an outdoor picture, like if they're on a hike, that's great. If they've got a dog, that's great. That's another common thing too. You know, I love my dog and I post pictures of my dog all the time, but maybe one of my profile pictures has my dog in it with me on a hike. And that's showing my audience, whoever it is that looks at my profile, what my values are and what I like to do on the weekends, and maybe something that we can do together too.
Okay, cool. Okay. So piggybacking off what you said, you want somebody who's athletic or at least active. They actually outside. They're not a homebody. Homebodies are a turnoff for you. I know my interpretation might be a little bit harsher, so bear with me. I could be just getting the jokes off, but who knows? So homebodies are not as attractive as active people outside doing things. Okay, that's cool. It's just about preference. Like obviously, you being active, you running a gym, you turning around and then turning that into an online business, which was very, very clever on your end. So obviously, if that's a big part of your life, you want somebody that's going to have those same things. May I ask, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I just turned 40. Yeah, no problem there. My daughter turns 18 next week. So if you've got an appearance of family values as well, that's something that I look for too. I'm not excluding somebody who has kids, or there's a couple of apps out there that would actually like narrow down that preference of like, does not want kids. Okay, that's fine. I don't want any more kids. That's actually a match. Maybe that's a shared value we have. At least it would be something worth exploring. Taking it to the next level of actually having a conversation to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when you're getting into a situation, especially like at that age, like at that point, y'all have kind of been through. I can understand why somebody would say at 40, if they're dating, is like, look, I don't really want to deal with, I really don't want kids in the future. Like, at least they're being honest and telling you up front, like, look, I have a set of kids of my own. I've raised them. I don't know if I'm ready to spend the next 20 years past 40 raising another set of kids.
Amen
I don't
to
know
that,
if
man.
I'm ready for all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So because that's a huge task. You're talking about a 20-year plus grind. To do that
Again,
2 times in a lifetime is a lot.
Yeah, back to back and not sequentially.
Right. Absolutely, man. So my next question is, how has your dating experience been while in quarantine? So if you want to go into the stories, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the stories are what we connect over and what we can actually have some levity over. I'm always down to start a new conversation, whether that be on social media or through a friend of a friend. So I wasn't necessarily putting a stop to that the entire year, like I mentioned earlier. I simply just wasn't taking the active next step of saying, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? Or do you want to go for a walk in the park with the dog? First of all, we didn't know what boundaries we have around our physical health, with the COVID being a main topic of conversation for everyone. But I also understood that, you know what, I had to take care of myself first and kind of establish what my business future was going to look like before I even jump into a partnership. Because if I bring that weight of a scarcity mindset of like, I don't know where my next $5 is going to come from, that's not even going to build a good foundation of a relationship anyways. So what I chose to do is I chose to wait until I had some cash flow coming from my business. I was a little bit more satisfied with my financial situation so that I could actually say yes to a coffee if it actually happened, or a walk to the park. Or as it turns out, when I started to have the mindset of like, I'm ready to meet somebody new and take these conversations from Instagram or a friend of a friend or a blind date, I actually was approached by a matchmaker, and he said, "Hey, Dave, I'd like to put you in my candidate pool so that my clients who pay me, I can match them with you. No financial investment on your end. My clients pay me. I just want you to be there as like, if you're the right match, here's a date for you." I'm like, yeah, totally down for that. I was actually open for meeting new people at the time. So he sat me down for 30, 45 minutes and asked me a ton of questions and matched me with an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. Well, an out of work personal trainer connecting with an ear, nose, and throat surgeon over Zoom for the first date, things went pretty well. You know, I was actually pretty clear in saying, hey, I don't have any shame around losing my job, but it was part of my experience. And here's what I've done since. I've actually invested in myself and I've created this new program. And she was actually kind of impressed by that. So we took it to a second date, and it took a couple weeks to get ourselves arranged with a walk around the park with my dog. But when she showed up, let's just say like she had come from somewhere else, you know, somewhere else where she didn't have to be date ready, like no makeup, hadn't brushed her hair, was wearing not pajamas, but let's just say she was wearing some very casual clothing for a first in-person date. Right. So upon first impression, I get it. Everybody's busy. People are all living different lives around what their sheltering in place looks like. But if you're going to show up to a date and it's your second time speaking to somebody, it means you're a little bit interested. Let's show that interest through appearance and through preparation too. Let's be ready for the date. You know, so my first impression there was just, it was a little blah, but she's intelligent and our walk around the park was great. We had a good conversation, but I just knew it wasn't going to go to a third date. So that's definitely one experience I've had through a matchmaking service here in Denver where I live. And then, you know, that same weekend that I was set up on that first date with the Zoom through the matchmaker, actually other people started coming to me and say, "Hey, Dave, are you dating? Are you single? Do you want to do a Zoom date this weekend?" And I had 4 dates in that same weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, all over Zoom or FaceTime.
Well,
I'm like, wow, I just called in some abundance into my life, and it paid off because I chose to wait 6 months in the first part of 2020 before I actually put it out there to the universe and saying, "Hey, God, I'm ready. What do you got for me?" And he brought it into my life, 4 in the same weekend.
So you acquired 4 dates after being patient and waiting for 6 months. Now, let me go into each one. The first date of the 4. Right? So the first date of the 4. Tell me how that went.
Sure, that's awesome. She and I had actually met on Hinge back in December, and we met for coffee once in December. So I knew of her, and we stayed connected on social media. And what it appeared to me in December was that she was just so busy finishing her master's program while she was on break between semesters she's a teacher and a student. It just to me felt like she was super busy. No time whatsoever for a partner at the time because I'm looking for more of like that long-term relationship. And so we stayed connected on social media, just trading likes, a message here and there. And then right around that same time, she's like, "Hey, I haven't been on a Zoom date yet. Do you want to try that? Like, are you still single? Are you looking?" And she showed up to that date. We each had our glass of wine and it felt like a real date, you know, like we actually had good conversation. But when the conversation turns to her exes, like plural exes, I don't mind hearing about an ex or two if it's part of the context in the conversation. But I heard about every single one of her exes who like was the crazy guy, you know, crazy jealous guy too. And when I hear that on a first date, I'm like, all right, maybe either we haven't let something go or we're seeing a pattern here. Okay, why are all of your exes jealous types? And so there wasn't a second date after that. I just didn't feel like we were a good match based on our conversation on the first date.
Okay. All right. Well, let's break that down. First of all, when a chick how many exes would you say, if you remember the conversation? How many was it, like 6, 5?
Probably closer to 5. I mean, she had to have been late 30s and like, I'm okay with hearing about one ex, but like, if you're bringing up 5 and I'm trying to steer the conversation in other directions, but we still keep coming back to that, I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, because it kind of shows two things. One, you may not be over 5 exes. You may still have them in rotation. And considering what's going on, the last thing you want to have in rotation is your crazy boyfriend and you don't know if he's got COVID or not. That's just something you don't want to do.
Yeah, it kind of appeared to me that there was some trust issues here as well.
Potentially, like, I don't know this person, but potentially, like, if you got 5 exes and depending on if they were back to back or separated at certain points, and they all were crazy, they all were at some point, you have to dig deep and be like, okay, am I attracting the right kind of people with how I'm acting? Is this the way that that I want to go about this? Is this, is it me?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't really like asking, especially nowadays, because pride is one of the most it's one of the most stupidest attitudes that somebody can have. It's pride and entitlement will make anybody die on a hill. It's one of those situations where, okay, at some point you have to dig deep and figure out, okay, I may have done this to cause these exes to act this crazy. Because ain't no man just acting crazy to act crazy. Some situation made them react that way. Ain't no man sitting over here, unless he got, serious mental health issues, will be like, okay, go get the help for that. We pray for you and all that type of stuff. However, like, ain't nobody just doing crazy stuff like fighting a guy in a parking lot unless there's a reason why it led up to that. Like, I'm not going to, I'm a very sane person. I'm not going to walk around and smack people out of nowhere. Like, that's just chaotic to me. Or act like or if I see my, let's say I'm in a relationship, I see just some random guy talking to her, and it may not be nothing. Like me walking over, or any guy walking over, jealous guy walking over, and overreacting, there's got to be a reason why he's overreacting. Did you give him a reason not to trust him? Vice versa. These are questions that I would be asking. I always think kind of like on different angles when it comes to this thing, especially when it comes to relationships. Mm-hmm. So we got the first one out of the way. What about your second date? Date number 2.
Yeah, the second date was somebody I'd known for a while. She's a marriage and family therapist in New York City. All right, cool. We got a good foundation of some healthy mental health there. All right. We'd known each other through social media and had met one time while she visited Denver. She hit me up and said, hey, do you want to go grab coffee or something like that? So I met up with her and a couple of her friends while they were in town. Good conversation, nice person. We were both seeing somebody at the same time at that time. So that was last October that we met in person. And it comes around to this year. We had stayed connected on social media and messaged back and forth every once in a while. Turns out, we had chatted a little bit early, maybe right around March, just checking in with each other. Hey, how you doing? Just making sure you're okay. And we knew that New York City was a hotbed for COVID at the time. So, and then she dropped off the face of the earth for about 6 weeks. And, she's not big on social media, but after 6 weeks in the middle of May, I noticed that she started liking a bunch of my stuff on social media, and she reached out. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Haven't talked in a while. Oh, just totally realized I didn't reply to your text back in April. Sorry about that. And the conversation got going, and we were texting back and forth, and found out she was single for the last couple months. And that's why we didn't hear from her for a while. I'm like, hey, what does it look like to you to go out on a date with me? Let's do FaceTime date this Friday. And she said yes. And then things went very well. Those typical first dates where you're like, oh, I totally lost track of time. Now it's 5 hours later and I got to go to bed. It's midnight on a Friday. And one FaceTime date turned into 4 or 5 more. And we dated through the end of June. And then we both decided to take some time to ourselves as individuals and work on some things that came up at that 1 month mark. And it was a good decision for us both.
It's interesting. It's a very positive second date that led to a series of others. She should have answered your text. It could have been a lot more dates.
starting in April.
Right.
Right. Neither one of us were ready at that time. We knew it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, if
I
you
knew
know,
I
you
wasn't.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So let's get to date number 3, man.
Mm-hmm. That was the ear, nose, and throat person. That was the Zoom first date. So that happened Saturday.
Oh, okay. And then number 4.
Yeah, number 4 was another person I met through Facebook. She's local here in Denver, but because everybody was sheltering in place, we hadn't met in person. But we had one phone conversation, business related. She hosts a podcast and she's big into like masculine, feminine energy dynamics and this cool tool called the Human Design. So we were talking about that on the phone. But we had scheduled a second follow-up phone call that we both had interest to find out more about the other. So we had about an hour and 15-minute long phone conversation where she dominated the conversation. Let's just put it that way. She was very enthusiastic about things that were going on in her life. And it seemed like it was just my job to kind of keep that conversation going in that direction. And that's okay with me. I just didn't feel a connection as soon as that conversation was over. So we haven't connected since, but other than professional reasons.
I'm going to dig in more to that. So let's talk about it for a second. So when you are on a date with somebody, whether it's quarantine or whether it's a natural date, whatever, when you are talking with somebody and somebody sits over there and talks about themselves, yes, they are passionate. Yes, they are excited about what they're doing. And while, yes, that is attractive and that is something that can get you to the the edge of the door frame, it may come after a while, it may come off self-centered, which was probably a turn off for you. And it may come off like you didn't say it, but you may feel like your opinion, your way of life will feel kind of inadequate. It kind of feels like less than in her mind to what she got going on. Was that a fear that you had?
I definitely understand where you're coming from. And certainly a sensitive person would feel like that. And I've been single for about 3 years, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it with the first date I was telling you about, where these repeated jealous ex-boyfriends were still topic of conversation. And what I've done for myself is I've looked at these patterns in my life of understanding, okay, why do the relationships either fail at around 3 months or 3.5 years? That just seems to be a pattern in my life. So since I've become single 3 years ago, I've spent my entire, more like a hobby, more like a personal passion and a pursuit of personal growth. And I've uncovered the past patterns that created those trends, unlike that first date that I was telling you about. And what I've come to understand is that type of a first date where the feminine energy, not necessarily a woman, but the feminine energy is just like super chaotic and really a winding conversation, mostly about herself, mostly about her experience in life, is actually a really healthy, sacred, feminine type behavior. And on a first date, the masculine, myself in this case, or whatever masculine person is at the table, doesn't have to be a man or not. That masculine just has to create the framework for the feminine to kind of dance and play and create the artwork within the frame. And that's a really good experience on a first date. And what I've come to understand is really healthy. But if it goes to a second date like that, now we're getting into that self-centered, egocentric, a little bit of narcissism, and that's okay. Because there's a sliding scale for narcissism, 1 through 5. They might be a 1, and the first 2 dates are talking all about themselves. And me sitting over there, okay, you haven't asked me a question yet. Let's divide the time here. Let's make sure that both parties, myself included, feel like we're valued and heard and understood, and that my opinion and my life is actually going to matter to you. I love that point that you brought up.
Right. It's because it's one of those things, man. It's one thing to talk about when when you are dating, it is very important, and I don't care if it's quarantine or a regular date. Hopefully we're out of this pandemic. People would know how to date regularly. When you are talking with somebody, it's very important to listen to where they're coming from, because it's very attractive when the other mate feels like their opinion and their life is valued, what they're interested in. Something as simple as, hey, like, what did you think about this? What do you think about this this shirt or this cologne? I was thinking about getting it, but I didn't know, if there was a smell you preferred. Like, hey, try it out. Let me know what you think. If you like it, I'll buy it. That is huge. That is huge. Why? Because it's basically saying, without saying it, wow, you value my opinion. Little tricks like that always work. Like, and it's one of those situations where I look at it as, if you value somebody's opinion of who they are, it's going to carry on the relationship longer. It's one of those situations where now the building block of understanding each other can begin. So, I mean, I definitely agree with where you're coming from, that is definitely something that is very key. You can get away with that the first date, but the second, the third, fourth date, it becomes like, okay, man, if you don't get this egotistical, self-centered mate out my face, it's one of the things, like, especially if I don't have time for it, like. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, man, and I just want to kind of pick your brain about this. You've had these other 4 dates. Are there any other dates that you have not mentioned where the situation got a little bit too crazy, where it was like, all right, I mean, the date was a crap show. I'm talking about way before these ones. Were there any dates in particular that you learned from where it was like, okay, this date's a total crap show, got a little too crazy, I'm gone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can I narrow it down to one? I mean, shoot, online dating for 3 years in Denver, you're going to find a few of those, but a couple of them stand out. And probably about a year and a half ago, I'm sifting through Bumble, whatever. Single dad, not a lot of time. So online dating was how I was meeting people at the time. And I come across this really good looking girl and a very unusual name. And I swipe right. And then later on, maybe the next day or something like that, get a match with her. I'm like, oh, that's curious. Oh, good. Nice. I'm excited to eventually chat with her when she reaches out to me. And the first message I get from her is like, hey, Dave, do you remember me? We dated 10 years ago. And I remember as soon as she said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I recognize the unusual name. This very dynamic first name. I've never met anybody else with the same first name. So, yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember dating you and I remember liking you a lot. The trouble was 10 years ago when we dated, this is now 12 years ago, she was just barely 21 and I was like 27, 28 or something like that. And neither one of us were looking for a relationship. So she called me the wrong name in bed and I hadn't seen her since. So 10 years later.
We ain't skipping over that. What you mean the wrong name in bed?
So my name's Dave. She called me Brian. She said, I made a request. I'm like, hey, I brought my own condoms. I didn't like yours last time. She's like, it's not all about you, Brian.
So she was hooking up with somebody else potentially?
Well, I didn't want to necessarily straight up accuse her of that because that wasn't the moment. We finished what we were doing and I left for the night. And the next day she texts me and she's like, hey, Dave, do you want to go get lunch later this week? And I'm like, yeah, I'd really like that. But can I swing by and just talk to you about something really quick? I was on my way to work and she was a student at the time. So I knew that her afternoon was free. So I swing by and I'm like, hey, I'd love to see you again, but just FYI, do you remember calling me Brian last night? And she goes, I don't even know a Brian, which is a total lie because everybody knows a Brian.
Right. That's the most common name in this country.
Yeah.
Everybody knows
like
at least
John
one Brian.
Or Joe.
John,
or
Luke.
Don,
Mark.
Dan, whatever.
Right.
So 10 years later, we match on Bumble. And I remember liking her a lot, and she's still attractive, actually got better looking as she aged, which is awesome. So we met up for our first date after 10 years, and we're grabbing tacos on a Sunday. Neither one of us are drinking at the time. And we're kind of recounting what happened the first time we dated. And before I could tell her the name that she called me, she had remembered that she called me the wrong name, and she was a little embarrassed about it, but it's been 10 years, so we can move on. Before I told her what name she had called me in bed, she was telling me about the boyfriend that she dated right after me. His name was Brian. So of course she knew a Brian when we were dating.
Look, man. Look. I don't know who this person is, but I'm gonna just cut directly to the chase. The one thing you're gonna know about me, Dave, I'm very blunt.
Please.
First of all, let me say this for the record. You can't play. There is a strong possibility, a high probability. Homegirl was talking to Brian, who was a nominee while you were the award for the moment. That's what that screams to be.
Yep.
She dated Brian after you and then had the nerve to mention his name while y'all were in the middle of grown-up activities. First and foremost, that's a sign of cheating, infidelity. Look, me personally, you call in another guy's name and then I find out through the grapevine or however long it has been that your person after our thing from the past is the name of the person that you mixed me up with.
Yeah, we're going to have words.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you definitely, shoot, you better not see Brian in person.
Right. So the story doesn't end there. And after our first taco date, after 10 years, we didn't see each other again. But we had stayed connected on social media because we were friendly enough, we were mature enough that, hey, it might not be the right fit. But, maybe after you move into your new place, we can go out again. It was still on the table. Well, a few months go by and I see that she's posting ultrasound pictures on social media of the baby she's having with this new guy that she's together with. So the timing of everything, she went out with me on a Sunday night for tacos and quite possibly very soon after that was dating somebody else and they're going to have a baby. Now, I'm sure that they've had the baby by now. I definitely unmatched on social media after that. It was pretty much like the sign that I needed to all right, we're not going to be friends from here on out.
Look, man, to be honest with you, this is my honest feedback on what I'm hearing. It sounds like to me you were a draft pick that got on the team, got released as a restricted free agent.
And thank God I was never part of the starting lineup the second time around.
That's what that sounds to me, man. That is crazy.
Right. Remember, I don't want any more kids. Good thing. Dodged a bullet there.
Right. I kind of got nervous. I was like, oh my God, I hope he didn't go through with it that night.
No, we definitely did not sleep together the second time 10 years later. I learned my lesson the first time.
Well, I hope her and Brian, I'm sorry, whoever she's with now are fine or whatever.
Yeah, best wishes to them.
So I wanna switch gears to another story, man. What other crazy story you got besides the girl that can't figure out who she want to be with name wise?
Right. Right. So I'll end it with this very this is one of my favorite stories. So I was playing adult co-ed softball as like a release and as a business marketing strategy where I could connect with other people. And a couple of my teammates eventually became clients. So it was a good move. Well, we finish our spring season and there's an end of the season, huge bash of a party at a place called Sports Column here in town. And every team from every league, being kickball and skee ball and bar games and kickball and dodgeball, and they all come in masses to this bar. And we're getting to know each other. We're meeting people from other teams. We're playing beer pong, burgers, hot dogs, everything. Well, I got pretty drunk pretty fast, and I got pretty full pretty fast on the food, and I wasn't having a very good time. So I decided to walk down the street to a different bar. I was on my way home by myself. I was going to catch a lift after one more beer. This place called Cherry Cricket here in town. And I sit down at the bar, grab my first beer, and this girl walks over with to-go nachos and a rosé. And she's like, "Hey, is this seat open?" The seat next to me. And she sits down with her to-go nachos and her rosé, and she starts chatting me up. I'm like, "Oh, this is clever. She's cute. Let me get another beer." Conversation goes on. Within 5 minutes, she asked me for my number. And I'm like, I'm not that easy. I'm not a sure thing. You're going to have to work a little harder than that to get my number. But what came up in my mind is like, where are your friends, and what bet did you lose that you had to come over and get my number in the first 5 minutes? Right. So she orders another rosé and another rosé after that. And then she starts eating the nachos out of her to-go box. I'm like, again, where's this boyfriend that you're supposed to be taking these nachos to? He's probably like really kind of getting antsy for his nachos. So she eventually gets my number after about 45, 50 minutes. I made her work for it. And then she texts me really quick, and I had her number, and I decided to take my shot that night. So I text her when I get home. I'm like, "Hey, nice to meet you. What are you doing the rest of the night?" Didn't hear back from her. 3 months later, I go to a bachelor party in San Diego, 4 nights, 5 days, and we do it up. Everything except for everything. Can I get crass? Everything except strippers and blow. Everything but, And we partied it up, and I'm just like so hungover trying to catch my flight home. And I walk up to the Southwest kiosks where you get your own ticket, and she's standing right in front of me in the kiosk line to go home to Denver. 3 months later, crazy. San Diego. And I don't think she recognized me. And I thought to myself, I'm like, "Hey, Dave, you got to send the 'Hey, you up' text right now." Just out of the blue, it says, hey, you up? And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, why shouldn't I send that text? Well, probably because she's on the same flight from San Diego back to Denver, and God knows she would be sitting next to me on that flight if I send this text right now. And to me, that's personal growth, because I didn't send that text.
Did she sit next to you?
No, I don't know if she was on the flight or not, but she had her hat down, because I guarantee she was partying for the weekend too. It was Labor Day weekend. I guarantee you that she caught me out of the corner of her eye, and she's like, "Oh God, please don't see me. Please don't see me."
So this girl had the nerve to ghost you, not get back to you months later at like that. This is why that ghosting stuff is terrible. It's one thing. Oh man. Here's my problem with ghosting. I have a love-hate relationship with ghosting. Here's why. Sometimes it's needed because the person is not putting in the same effort that you're putting in. So maybe you just should stop texting, unfriend who you need to unfriend, and stuff like that nature. But when somebody's trying to make an effort constantly and it's no response, and y'all live in the same town, it's a small town. You don't think you ain't gonna run into the person at some point in time? Man, listen, ghosting is trash.
Yep.
On that end. And it's one of them situations, man. It's like this, right? When it comes to dating, especially in quarantine, my thing about this is taking time to really get to know somebody, and the issue is, and I think that this was an issue with some of the situations that you were running into, either people were overthinking certain things to make the situation more complicated than it had to be. Imagine how differently the situation would be if the girl had just came out and said, "I'm confused. I don't know if I want Brian or want you." Or the girl was like, "Look, I did it. I kind of got your number for 45 minutes to see if I still had the ability to. It was fun talking with you. I don't want you to think I don't want you to lead you on, but that's what I was literally trying to do. There's nothing wrong with being that honest, because it saves a lot of headache later. Because I guarantee you there were some moments where you were like, this trick didn't really, really got the nerve to ignore me. She had the nerve to potentially, look, you might have got cheated on. You just don't want to admit it. You know what I mean? And that potential situation and stuff of that nature, man, it's just crazy, you know? So when things like this happen and you're looking at the situation from that perspective, it's one of those situations, man, that makes you wish that people in this era, in terms of dating, especially when you're quarantined, because you ain't got nowhere to go. And it's very important just to be honest with a person. Mm-hmm. People be inside their own head so much when it comes to like relationships and trying to figure stuff out and dating and stuff like this. Like, I've met people that have, they can hit me up, do a natural text, conversation be flowing, no problem. Soon as they talk to somebody they like, oh, what should I say? Like, they need a script. What you need a script for? Just say what you got to say. What you need a script for? You don't need a producer. I don't need to write for you. You don't need to write for me. Just say what you got to say. This ain't SNL. We don't have producers and stuff to have you say the right thing to find your mate. Like, it was just ridiculous. So the overthinking that I see amongst this generation, and also you probably seen it in your generation too, we overthink too much, man. Mm-hmm. We overthink too much. It's like, my goodness. Like, imagine how different the relationships would be. I'll go as far as to say this. There's a chance that people missed out on their soulmate because they overthought. Mm-hmm. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. I'll go even further. I think people missed out on a potential great experience with dating because they overthought. I'll go as far as to say they could have even avoided an entanglement, cheating, whatever you want to call it, folks, if they had just remained open and honest.
Yep. Yeah. If we don't want the same thing, there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is that people aren't being honest with themselves and others about it.
Yeah, man. Like, and then you get frustrated. And then what that leads to is because now you feel like you're in a pinch, like you have to sit over here and, well, I have to keep the lie going to keep this, steady and not rock the boat. Rock the doggone boat. There's enough life jackets on that boat, I'm sure, to the point that you'll be fine. But you got to rock the boat or figure out a way to get yourself out of the boat and figure out where you want to sail to next. Like, this is not, rocket science, people. This is one of those situations where it's very, very important that you understand, especially when it comes to relationships, because relationships, y'all, I'm going to say this, y'all be making it complicated, super complicated, more than it needs to be. It don't even need to be that complicated.
Amen.
Like, you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you stick to that. Or if the girl is really worth it, you do compromises. But if something's really bothering you, like, for example, the girl can be great, she can be awesome, she's just not super active, and that's a big thing for you. So let's say she does a compromise and said, okay, look, I know I'm not active, but it said I'll do like a mile run every day to start out. That's a compromise. She could have been like, I ain't doing ish. I don't care what you say.
Sure.
She could have came off like that. But her doing a mile run a day is allowing you to have a bridge, not only to help her to get better with that, but now there's a commonality through the compromise, which helps push the relationship forward. Like, for example, what's like a pet peeve of yours?
Oh,
like a pet peeve that's actually adjustable, not something that's concrete. You ain't adjusting it for nothing.
Sure. I think that a respectable amount of time to message back, text back, call somebody back is within about 24 hours. But, if it goes longer than that, hey, that makes me feel like you're not interested. So not so much a pet peeve, more so as it's like a boundary for me. Like, okay, well, if it takes you 2 days to get back to me, I'll call you forth and I'll say, hey, I've noticed that it takes you a couple days to get back to me via text. That makes me feel like you're not interested. Is there any truth to that?
But see, you are being communicative as to what your line is. Some people ain't that communicative. Mm-hmm. Some people would rather. It's like they want you to figure it out through telekinesis and not say nothing, which is about the stupidest, god awful way of doing things. Like I'm not. I'm a guy. There's certain things I'm not going to pick up on with a lady just sitting there with a mean look on her face. No, you got to tell me how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. You have to let me know. Like, I can't pick up. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to pick up on every hunch. You have to let me know. We have to communicate. Like, telekinesis and you staying quiet is not going to work. What is going to work is if, you can be upset about something. You could be kind of pondering about something, but communicate that. And also, the thing that I also want to break down is, I'll take your example. So, let's say you ask that question. She says, well, the work that I do, I'm in the hospital. A lot of it is time-intensive stuff. I'm there for hours on end. My schedule is very, very topsy-turvy. There's some days I'll get out during the day. There's some days I may be there all night. And it's nothing against you, but due to the demanding of my job and stuff of that nature, that's what ends up happening. There may be a couple days here and there I may not get back to you, but I'll try my best or text you in between. Now that you know the situation, now that's something that can be worked on. I know people that will go, look, man, I got bills to pay. I got to explain that a doggone thing to you. Who the hell do you think you are? Stuff like that. It could have been a nasty turd.
Yeah. And the person who's not willing to communicate like you just showed, they don't have any room in my life. There's no room in my life for that person.
How about that? Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean in terms of just the communicating problem. A lot of the issues that I've seen in relationships, and trust me, I've seen a lot of them through a distance. Shout out to those who are in high school relationships that just went down the tubes, because y'all taught me a lot. Y'all taught me what not to do, especially you college relationships. Y'all taught me, I'm not calling anybody out. Y'all know who y'all are, but I just want to thank y'all for giving me from a distance, y'all gave me a lot of perspective. Because, boy, some of y'all just, y'all communication was horrible back then. Mm-hmm. All right, moving on.
And nowadays, those same people are living out their relationships on social media, and we can still watch and observe the train wreck occurring.
Yeah, that's another aspect of it, man. Look, man, y'all can't get mad if you're putting the business out on social media for everybody to see, then turn around and wonder why everybody's in your business.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was somebody I went to school with, and I'm not going to name names, but there was somebody I went to school with way back when we were kids. And, get older. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen this person in a long time. Let me add her as a friend. Maybe we can catch her down the line. It's not a problem. Just strictly platonic. Hey, I just want to see how you're doing because I ain't seen you in years. Man, she posting up arguments about her man, posting what he not doing, the issue that's happening that week. Somebody comments and makes their opinion on it, and she's like, this is my page. I will post what I want to post. You ain't going to have. I don't understand why people in my business. Girl, first of all, if you stop posting your daily vlog, your daily diary online about what he isn't doing every 5 minutes, then maybe you wouldn't have a bunch of people in your comments, in your post. There are people that will see stuff like that and go, they'll look at it and they'll never comment. but they'll definitely look at it and then take note that you are dogging this man or dogging this woman on social media for everybody to see. There are some things that are not good for social media. We can talk about, like, for example, the stories that you told me in this episode, some of them are freaking nuts. Some of them are quaint, and I do appreciate that. You had a good balance. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
There are other stories that I know of, whether they're friends, acquaintances, or whatever. They've had crazier stories where it was like, yo, how in the world your whole car get busted and you still safe? Stories like that, all because of something that got riled up on social media. So it's one of those situations, man. I look at it like this, like communication. Just because we're in quarantine and stuff like that, man, communication is very, very key.
Very.
And I wanted to kind of let you have the floor and give your personal thoughts on some tips, some things you've learned about how, in ways that people can have a healthy online dating journey in this quarantine that we're in. What advice can you give to the people?
Thank you very much. I think that this is a great opportunity and a pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on. This is a good opportunity to remind people to live publicly, but date privately. And on social media, prime case, we were talking about it just a moment ago, that if everybody knows your business of your dating and your partnership, then that's definitely not living publicly, dating privately. Like the person that I go out with a few times now, we don't need to speak about that because the story hasn't been written yet. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the next time that we see each other, but we're having a different conversation about fails, dating fails. So therefore, I'm not going to date publicly right now. The other three things that I would recommend for people who are out there dating in general, with or without a quarantine, is first, set your intentions, know what you're looking for, know what you're not looking for. And I recommend to my friends and family and people who reach out to me to build your ideal relationship, what that looks like to you, what your non-negotiables are, before you look for an ideal person. Because the relationship is the inflexible part. The person is the flexible part. And when we plug in the right person to the right relationship, that's where we find success. And in that relationship, point number 2 is to set healthy boundaries. Okay, you called me the wrong name in bed. I'm going to set a boundary of letting you know that you did that. This is me communicating to you that your behavior upset me. Here's our boundary. Can you actually fit within that boundary of not seeing anybody else but me if we're sleeping together? If that's a no, okay, thank you very much for being honest with me. I'm going to move on now. And then finally, the third thing I want people to know is manage your own expectations. If you go into a new partnership in the first month, I was just chatting with a girl yesterday. She's like, oh my God, I've met my person. Okay, how long have you been dating? A month. And he's met all of my friends and all my friends love him. Awesome. That's great. Here's another question. Have you had your first conflict yet? When you get into your first conflict with your partner, that's when all of their stuff is going to come out. That's where all of your stuff is going to come out. And if you don't know how to manage your own expectations about what I need to hear in that first conflict, you're going to be at a loss there because you're going to come up with 2 different communication styles. One is a shutdown person. The other one is a screamer. One is a person who likes to run from conflict. The other person is likes to pursue conflict and won't let you leave the room without actually handling the business at hand. And so that's why I had that question for her of have you guys had your first bit of conflict yet? And that's when you really know. I like to call it love at first fight, not love at first sight. Because if you can get through that first fight with somebody, managing your own expectations and sharing your boundaries with your partner, and you both compromise and accept each other, then you're going to have a higher probability of being successful in your relationship in the future, long term.
That's 40 years of experience, ladies and gentlemen. And an 18-year-old daughter later. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? That's wisdom. We gonna celebrate that. That's wisdom. That's wisdom right there. Y'all take that. Y'all that are my age and younger, y'all better take every last thing he said as gospel. He just gave you, let me tell you something. He gave you 40 years of game right there. He prevented a lot of people from making a lot of stupid mistakes just now. Y'all should be thankful. Man, y'all should be thankful. Yeah, man, that's no problem, man.
What I want to close out with is that none of those three things that I talked about are about the other person, because we have to understand that everything we have, past patterns included, all starts with us. And if we don't repair the wounds that hurt us in childhood and early adulthood and later adulthood, if we don't repair those, we're going to bleed on people who didn't cut us.
I like that. That is a very powerful statement. That is a very powerful statement. Keep it going. No, keep it going. Floor is yours. Keep it going. I ain't got that time.
I know we got a late start. I got jujitsu at 5:00, but I'll leave you guys with this, that when you're trying to communicate with your partner and you know it's going to be a sensitive issue, you can dive deep into nonviolent communication. And I'll sum it up with this one phrase, and then I'll give you an example. Lead with the truth. Lead with grace, then the truth. And we'll apply it to our text message conversation earlier. I dated somebody who it took 2 days to get back to me once. And I said, this is nonviolent communication in a nutshell. I noticed that it takes you a little while, a day or two, to get back to me via text. That makes me feel like you're not interested in me. Is there any way that we could dedicate some time to talking about whether or not that's true? And if there's something that we can come to as an agreement that makes me feel understood, is that something you're open to?
See that? That is a great example of communicating properly versus, look, baby, I know you suck at communicating. Your communicating skills are trash. Like that, the difference between what he did and what I did, if y'all can't figure out the difference, y'all really need some counseling.
Take some time off. Take 6 months off. Don't date.
Right. Get some mental healing, get spiritual healing, get physical healing, whatever you need to do. Yeah, take care of that first. Well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for coming on Audio Airstrike. Before you leave out, before I close out, man, you can feel free. You can have the floor again to, let people know where they can find you, your business, the website, the social media, where they can find stuff for your online fitness business.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share. My mission is to share the benefits of fitness and nutrition for mental health. And I do understand the correlation between our stress levels in our relationships and reaching our fitness and nutrition goals. If we're concerned about something at home, there's no way hours and hours and hours in the gym is actually going to help us accomplish our weight loss, our muscle mass building, our sports performance goals, anything. And that's my personal mission, is to share those benefits through our relationships, the most important ones, those closest to us, my daughter, my future partner, and my fitness routine. When I combine all of those, I know that I can actually have a good grasp and a handle on my busy lifestyle, reaching my goals quickly and safely. So if you want more information on the fitness brand, go to fitlifechampions.com, or if it's simpler, daveglaser.com, and you'll find a direct link to a free 7-day trial that I want to offer up to your audience. Just let me know how you think about the 7-day trial. Our brand new app launches next week, and we couldn't be more excited to support our fitness community through their relationships and through their fitness and nutrition goals.
Well, that's awesome. We definitely go out and support Dave Glaser and his initiative to help people through mental health through the use of exercise and fitness. Dave, I want to thank you for coming on. And this has been another edition of Audio Airstrike. Make sure that when you are dating, please date healthy. With that being said, until next time, everybody, y'all take care. Peace.